The wedding was supposed to start in 4 hours. Instead, I was crouched behind my own hydrangea bushes, watching my husband kiss my son's fiancée through the living room window. 25 years of marriage. And this is how I found out it was all a lie. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just pulled out my phone and started recording, because what happened next would destroy everything. And I needed proof. My name is Margaret Chen. I'm 52 years old, and this is the story of how I lost my family and found myself on the same day. On the morning of my son's wedding, I woke up at 5 a.m. I couldn't sleep. I told myself it was just nerves, the kind any mother feels on such an important day. I sat in my home office staring at spreadsheets on my computer screen. I run a small CPA firm from home. Nothing extravagant, but it helped pay for our son Daniel's college and covered the extras that my husband Richard's salary didn't quite reach. The numbers on the screen were a blur. My mind was somewhere else entirely. Outside, the world was still dark and silent, but I could already picture the scene that would unfold on the patio of our Atlanta estate in just a few hours. White chairs arranged in perfect rows on the lawn, the arch that Richard had built, covered with the rose bushes I had nurtured since they were tiny buds, string lights I had checked 3 times myself, making sure not a single bulb was out. Everything had to be perfect. Our son, our Daniel, deserved a perfect day. 25 years of marriage to Richard, 23 years raising Daniel. I had dedicated my entire life to this family. I had been the steady hand, the planner, the one who remembered dental appointments and birthdays and made sure the bills were paid on time. Richard was the charmer, the life of the party, the one everyone loved. I was the foundation he leaned on, and for a long time, that was enough for me. But lately, something had felt off. A silent distance had settled between us. It was in the way he would stop talking when I walked into a room, in the way his phone was always tilted away from me. When I asked if something was wrong, he would simply laugh it off. "Just work, honey," he'd say. "Big promotion on the line." I chose to believe him. What else could I do? You don't toss 25 years of history overboard because of a feeling. The click of the office door brought me back to the present. It was Daniel, standing there in his pajamas, a mug of coffee in his hand. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. At 25, he had my practical nature, but his father's handsome features. "Mom, you've been up for hours," he said. "The wedding isn't until 4:00. "I just want everything to be perfect for my boy," I said, attempting a cheerful smile as I closed my laptop. "Dad's already gone. He left early," Daniel said with a strange note in his voice. "Said something about picking up a gift for Vanessa's parents." I frowned. That was new to me. "Mom," he said, hesitating, "can I ask you something?" I turned my chair to face him. Under the harsh light of my desk lamp, his worry was evident. "What's on your mind, sweetie?" He took a deep breath. "Do you think Vanessa really loves me?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. Vanessa, his fiancée, ambitious, beautiful, a young architect from a wealthy family with influence. On the surface, she was everything we had always wanted for Daniel. But I'd had my own doubts. I had seen how her eyes would sometimes drift when Daniel talked about his passions, how she checked her phone during family dinners. "Why would you ask that, honey? It's your wedding day." "I know, and maybe it's just last-minute jitters," he mumbled, staring into his coffee. "But sometimes when she looks at me, I feel like she's looking right through me, like I'm just a box she needed to check off on her way to the perfect life." He paused. "And lately, she's been spending a lot of time with Dad. They're always talking about finances, investments. She says he's mentoring her." I wanted to tell him about the things I had also noticed, how Richard's eyes followed Vanessa around the room, how he always found excuses to help her with her coat or refill her drink, how he knew exactly how she liked her coffee, 2 sugars and a splash of milk, without having to ask. Instead, I reached out and squeezed his hand. "Wedding jitters are normal, sweetie. Marriage is the biggest step you'll ever take." "It's not just jitters, Mom," he said, his voice breaking. He finally looked up at me, his eyes filled with a pain that terrified me. I think she's in love with someone else. I froze. The blood turned to ice in my veins. What makes you say that? Little things, he whispered. The way she lights up when Dad calls. How she always asks about him first when she comes over. I saw them in the garden yesterday just talking, and the way he looked at her, it wasn't how a father-in-law should look at his son's fiancée. I felt a flush rise up my neck. I forced my voice to stay steady. Daniel, that's a very serious accusation. I know, he said, shrugging, and I hope I'm wrong. God, I hope I'm wrong. Before I could reply, the door opened again. It was Richard. He was already dressed in an impeccable shirt and dress slacks, looking immaculate as always. Well, look at my two favorite people, he exclaimed, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. He seemed surprised to see Daniel there. Big day, son. You should be getting ready. He turned his attention to me. And you, Maggie, you're going to wear yourself out. Vanessa just called. She's coming by around 10 noir to discuss some last-minute seating chart details. I watched Daniel's expression tighten. What details? He asked. Oh, just making sure her parents don't sit next to your Uncle James after that political argument last Christmas, Richard said with a dismissive wave. We should discuss it privately because of the politics and all that. Of course, Daniel said, his voice flat. We can't have the wrong people sitting together. The tension in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I watched my husband and my son, and I knew deep in my soul that Daniel wasn't wrong. Something was terribly, horribly wrong. After Richard and Daniel left my office, a cold dread seized me. I was supposed to have a final call with the caterer at 10:30, a call I had been planning for weeks. I picked up the phone and canceled it, told them I had a family emergency. It was a lie. The truth was I had cleared my entire morning. I couldn't shake Daniel's words, nor the nauseating feeling that Richard's false cheer had provoked. Something was happening in my house today, and for the first time in 25 years I intended to find out what it was. I spent the next 2 hours pretending to be busy. I tidied the kitchen, which was already spotless. I rearranged the floral centerpieces on the dining room table. Every sound made me jump. Every passing car made my heart hammer against my ribs. I felt like an actress in a play, performing the role of the happy mother of the groom, while inside I was twisted with anxiety. At exactly 10:00, a sleek white BMW pulled into our driveway. Vanessa's car. I watched from the kitchen window as she stepped out. Even in simple jeans and a blouse, she looked like she belonged on a magazine cover. She walked up to the front door with the natural confidence of someone who knows she belongs. My heart was beating so loud I could hear it in my ears. I crept out the back door and circled the house, crouching low behind the large hydrangea bushes that bordered our living room windows. I felt ridiculous, like a spy in my own home, but the need to know, the need to confirm my fears or dispel them, was overwhelming. I peered through the window. Richard was already there, waiting for her. He had changed into a casual sweater, the blue one I had bought him for his birthday. My stomach turned. Vanessa walked in, and the moment the door closed behind her, everything changed. Richard pulled her into his arms, not a friendly hug, not the embrace of a future father-in-law. He kissed her, deeply, passionately, like a man reuniting with a long-lost lover, and she kissed him back. My world shattered into a million pieces right there, crouched in the dirt behind my own flowers. I watched as they broke apart, breathless, foreheads touching. I can't do this anymore, Vanessa whispered, pretending with Daniel. It's killing me. Just a few more hours, Richard said, stroking her hair. After the wedding, we'll figure everything out. We'll be together. I promise. What about Margaret? She'll never know. She's too trusting, too focused on making everything perfect. He laughed, a cruel, dismissive sound. She sees what she wants to see. The words hit me like physical blows, too trusting, too focused. She sees what she wants to see. 25 years. I had given this man 25 years of my life. I had built a home around him, raised his son, supported his career, forgiven his absences and his silences. And this is what I was to him, a convenience? A fool? I raised my phone with trembling hands and pressed record. Now, before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I see every single comment and they mean the world to me. Thank you so much for your support. Now, back to the story. I don't know how long I stayed there behind those bushes. Time lost all meaning. I watched them talk, laugh, plan their future, a future that was built on the ruins of my life and my son's heart. When they finally separated, Richard heading upstairs and Vanessa leaving through the front door, I stayed frozen. My knees were locked, my phone still clutched in my hand. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I spun around, my heart nearly stopping. It was Daniel. He was standing there in the garden, still in his pajamas, his face a mask of stone. He looked at me, crouched in the dirt like a broken thing, and his expression didn't change. "Mom," he whispered, "I already know, and it's worse than you think." I scrambled to my feet, leaves and dirt clinging to my clothes. "Daniel, I've known for 3 months," he said quietly. "I found texts on Vanessa's phone. I've been gathering evidence ever since." I stared at him, not comprehending. "Evidence?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a flash drive. "It's not just an affair, Mom. It's fraud. They've been stealing from us." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean? Dad and Vanessa, they've been siphoning money from your business accounts, from the retirement fund, from everything. Over $200,000 in the past year alone." I felt the ground tilt beneath my feet. That's impossible. I manage the books. I would have noticed." "Would you?" Daniel asked gently. "When's the last time you really looked at the accounts, Mom? Really looked? Or did you trust Dad to handle the investments like he always said he would?" The truth hit me like a freight train. Richard had insisted on handling the big picture finances years ago. Said it was too stressful for me to manage everything. Said he wanted to take some burden off my shoulders. And I had let him, because I trusted him. Because I was too focused on keeping everything else perfect. "There's more," Daniel said, his voice cracking. "Dad has another family." I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. A daughter. Her name is Lily. She's 23 years old, lives in North Carolina. He's been supporting her and her mother for over 2 decades. The world was spinning now. I reached out and grabbed the edge of the garden bench to steady myself. How do you know all this?" "I hired a private investigator," Daniel said. "After I found those texts, I needed to know everything. And Mom..." He paused, swallowing hard. "I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner. But I wanted to have all the evidence first. I wanted to make sure they couldn't deny it, couldn't gaslight us, couldn't make us doubt what we saw." I looked at my son, my beautiful, broken son, standing there with proof of his father's betrayal in his hand. He had been carrying this weight alone for months, planning, preparing, protecting me in the only way he knew how. "What do we do now?" I whispered. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Now," he said, "we go to the wedding." I thought he had lost his mind. "Daniel, you can't possibly..." "I'm not marrying her, Mom, but I'm not going to let them win either." His eyes were hard, cold, nothing like the gentle boy I had raised. "They think they've fooled us. They think they can stand up there and make vows while laughing at us behind our backs." He held up the flash drive. "I've prepared something, a little presentation for our guests. Everyone Vanessa's family knows, everyone Dad's colleagues respect. They're all going to be there. They're going to see exactly who they really are." I should have stopped him. I should have been the rational one, the steady hand that pulls back from the edge. But I didn't. Because I thought about all those years of trust, all those late nights I spent working while Richard handled the finances, All those moments I ignored my instincts because I wanted to believe in the life I had built. They had stolen more than money. They had stolen my faith, my dignity, my son's future. "Okay," I said quietly. "Let's do it." The next few hours passed in a surreal haze. I showered, did my makeup, put on the elegant mother-of-the-groom dress I had picked out months ago, a soft lavender that Richard had said made me look sophisticated. I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. She looked calm, composed, ready to celebrate her son's wedding. Inside, she was a storm waiting to break. Daniel played his part perfectly. He greeted guests with a warm smile. He posed for photos with Vanessa, his arm around her waist, his eyes giving nothing away. Vanessa glowed. She was radiant in her designer wedding gown, accepting compliments and congratulations like a queen receiving tribute. Richard worked the crowd like he always did, charming, confident, the proud father of the groom. And I watched them all, knowing what was coming. The ceremony began at 4 p.m. exactly. The sun was golden, the roses were in full bloom, and 200 guests were seated on the white chairs I had arranged so carefully. Vanessa walked down the aisle, beautiful and triumphant. Daniel waited at the altar, his face a perfect mask of happiness. The minister began the ceremony. The usual words about love and commitment and partnership filled the air. Then came the moment for the vows. Daniel turned to face Vanessa, and something in his expression shifted. "Before I say my vows," he said, his voice carrying across the silent garden, "I have something I need to share with everyone." Vanessa's smile flickered. Richard, seated in the front row, went very still. "Marriage is supposed to be built on trust," Daniel continued, "on honesty, on the belief that the person standing beside you has your best interests at heart." He paused, looking out at the confused faces of our guests. "But what happens when that trust is a lie?" He pulled out his phone and pressed a button. On the large screen we had set up for the photo slideshow, the one meant to display adorable childhood pictures and romantic couple shots, a video began to play. It was the footage I had recorded that morning, Richard and Vanessa kissing in our living room. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Vanessa's face went white. Richard shot to his feet. "Daniel, what the hell are you—" "Sit down, Dad," Daniel said, his voice like ice. "We're just getting started." The video continued. More footage, time-stamped security camera recordings from inside our house over the past months. Richard and Vanessa together, meeting, touching, planning. Then came the financial records, screenshots of bank transfers, forged signatures, money flowing from my accounts into offshore holdings. "Over $200,000, Daniel announced to the stunned crowd, "stolen from my mother's business, from our family's retirement, from everything she built." He turned to look directly at his father. "And it gets better. Tell them about Lily, Dad. Tell them about your other family, the daughter you've been hiding for 23 years. The crowd erupted. Vanessa's mother fainted. Her father was shouting. Richard was trying to push through the chairs toward the screen, but several guests blocked his path. Vanessa tried to run. She didn't get far. 2 police officers stepped forward from their positions near the garden gate, officers Daniel had contacted days ago with all his evidence. "Vanessa Harper, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy," one of them announced, handcuffs clicking around her wrists. Her screams echoed across the garden as they led her away, her beautiful white dress trailing in the grass. Richard tried to flee in the chaos. He made it as far as his car before he realized his keys were gone. Daniel had taken them that morning. He stood in the driveway, surrounded by guests who had once respected him, his perfectly constructed life crumbling around him. I walked up to him slowly. For a moment, we just looked at each other. This stranger who had shared my bed for 25 years. "Maggie," he started, "I can explain." "No," I said quietly, "you can't." I reached into my purse and pulled out the divorce papers I had prepared the day before, after Daniel had shown me all the evidence. "My lawyer will be in touch." I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard him calling my name, but I didn't look back. I was done looking back. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below telling me where you're watching from. I read every single one. Now let's finish this story together. The 3 hours that followed the explosion were a blur of flashing blue lights, hushed conversations, and the slow, painful process of dismantling a wedding that never was. The police took statements. Vanessa was driven away in a patrol car, her beautiful wedding dress looking absurd and tragic in the harsh glare of the setting sun. Richard, after being questioned and released, simply disappeared. He got into a borrowed car and drove away without a word to me or his son. "And you?" Daniel asked later that evening, a flicker of the old warmth returning to his eyes. "How are you?" "I don't know yet," I answered honestly. "I think I'm just numb." The next few weeks were a painful, messy ordeal. The story became a local media sensation. Scandal on wedding day, fiancé arrested at altar, groom's father implicated in decades of deceit. Our names and faces were everywhere. I stopped answering the phone. I stopped leaving the house unless absolutely necessary. My small CPA firm suffered. Some longtime clients quietly took their business elsewhere, uncomfortable with the notoriety. The day after the wedding, I did exactly what I had planned. I walked into my lawyer's office with the signed divorce papers and the flash drive of evidence, and I filed. With the mountain of proof we had, Richard didn't even try to fight. The legal process was swift. In the settlement, I got the house and a significant portion of his remaining assets as compensation for the fraud he had committed against our retirement funds. It wasn't a victory. It was restitution. Vanessa, facing overwhelming evidence, took a plea deal. She was sentenced to 2 years in prison and ordered to pay back every cent she had stolen. Her family's reputation was destroyed. Richard's fall was quieter, but no less complete. He lost his job, his reputation, and the respect of everyone he knew. He moved into a small apartment across town, and from what I heard, he rarely showed his face in public. But the most complicated part of the aftermath was Lily. 2 weeks after the wedding, I received a letter. It was from Nicole, Lily's mother. It was short and to the point. She apologized for the pain her past relationship with Richard had caused and said her daughter had learned the truth from the news and wanted to meet Daniel and me. I sat with that letter for 3 days. What was I supposed to do? This girl was the living embodiment of my husband's biggest betrayal, but she was also an innocent. She hadn't asked for any of this. She was my son's sister. I showed the letter to Daniel. He read it, his face grim. "I want to meet her," he said immediately. "She's my sister, Mom. She deserves to know her family, or what's left of it." So I made the call. We agreed to meet at a neutral location, a quiet coffee shop in a town halfway between ours. I was terrified. As we waited for them to arrive, I twisted the napkin in my hands until it was a frayed mess. Then they walked in. Nicole was an ordinary, tired-looking woman who seemed to carry the weight of her secrets in the slump of her shoulders. And behind her was Lily. The moment I saw her, my breath caught. She had Richard's eyes, the same dark, intelligent eyes that had made me fall for him all those years ago. She looked scared and uncertain, clutching a book to her chest like a shield, and in that moment, looking at this innocent girl who was a victim in all of this, I knew my anger was not with her. It was with him. Always him. That first meeting with Lily was awkward. Words felt clumsy and inadequate. Daniel, bless his heart, did most of the talking. He asked her about college, about the books she was holding, about her life. He didn't ask about Richard. He simply treated her like a person, like a sister he was meeting for the first time. I, for the most part, just watched, trying to reconcile the image of this shy, sweet girl with the monumental lie she represented. Slowly, tentatively, we began to build something new. We met again for coffee, then lunch. Daniel and Lily started texting, discovering a shared love for old movies and spicy food. I found myself looking forward to seeing her, hearing about her life. She was bright, funny, and kind, an innocent soul caught in the wreckage caused by others. A year passed. Life settled into a new, unfamiliar rhythm. The divorce was finalized. The media storm subsided, replaced by newer, fresher scandals. I poured my energy into rebuilding my business, and slowly my clients started to come back. I sold the large family home with its yard full of ghosts and bought a smaller, more manageable townhouse. It was quiet, peaceful, and mine. Daniel, after months of therapy, was thriving. He had left his corporate job and gone back to school to pursue his true passion, landscape architecture. He was designing beautiful spaces, creating order and beauty out of dirt and stone, a fitting metaphor for what he was doing with his own life. He was dating a lovely young woman, a kind, genuine librarian who looked at him like he was the only person in the world. And Lily had become a part of our lives. She came over for dinner every other Sunday. She and Daniel had developed a real sibling bond, teasing each other and talking for hours. I found myself feeling a fierce, protective love for her. She was no longer a symbol of betrayal. She was just Lily, my son's sister, and in a strange way, a part of my family. One evening, about a year after the wedding that wasn't, I was sitting in the living room of my new home when the doorbell rang. It was Richard. I hadn't seen or spoken to him since the day he fled our ruined reception. He looked diminished, older, grayer. The confident arrogance was gone, replaced by a deep weariness. He asked if he could come in. I hesitated. Then I stood aside. He told me he was in therapy. He said he was trying to understand why he had done the things he had done. He apologized. He said he was sorry for the lies, for the betrayal, for the pain he had caused me, Daniel, and Lily. I listened, and I knew he meant it. But an apology couldn't erase 25 years of deceit. "I forgive you, Richard," I said, and I was surprised to find I actually meant it. Not for you, but for me. I can't carry that anger anymore. It's too heavy. I looked him in the eye. "But I will never trust you again. We can never go back." He nodded, a sheen of tears in his eyes. "I know," he whispered, and then he left. That night, as I got ready for bed, I found myself thinking about the woman I was a year ago, crouched in the dirt behind the hydrangeas. She was so broken, so lost. I wished I could go back and tell her that everything would be okay, that the pain wasn't the end of the story. The family I thought I had was a lie. It shattered into a million pieces on that sunny afternoon, but what Daniel, Lily, and I built in its place was smaller, quieter, and imperfect. But it was honest. It wasn't built on comfortable lies, but on difficult, painful, and ultimately freeing truth. We had lost everything, but in doing so, we had found something real, and for the first time in a long, long time, that felt like enough. Thank you so much for watching. More of my most gripping stories are already on your screen. Click one now and don't miss the best part. You'll love it. See you in the next one.